Hello and welcome to my channel. It's Vying for Purpose, where I share a little bit about my homeschooling journey. And today I have the privilege to have my good friend Jitsenia. We've known each other for a really long time, and I actually just found out that she's a homeschooling mommy. So I thought that we could collaborate on a few questions and concerns that we typically get, or questions of things that probably we fought with and wrestled with before we decided to homeschool. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Jasenia introduce herself and say a little bit about who she is.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasenia. Like Dalita said, we've been friends for many years. I am a licensed cosmetologist. I also went to school to be a cosmetology teacher, so I have some little bit of teaching background. I've worked for MAC Cosmetics for a few years, and currently I just started my own business, jetsenia.com. I sell jewelry, I sell clothes, and some cosmetics.
Awesome. Are you fully like working from home at this time?
I am fully working from home, and my husband holds the fort down for us, and I have my online business.
Awesome. So do you want to mention your webpage, just in case folks want to tap in and see what you got?
My website is Jetsenia, JETSENIA.com.
Awesome. That was free promo. Go see Jitsenia. Okay, so without further ado, we're just gonna jump in and we're going to talk about some of the issues that we wrestled with before we started homeschool. So the very first question is, what made you want to homeschool? I'm gonna let Jitsenia, the guest, go first.
What made me want to homeschool? I saw that my best friend started homeschooling. It worked out for her. She's actually our mutual friend, and it worked out for her and her children. My son was going through a little bit of bullying. I didn't like how the school was handling the situation, and that's what made me make that decision in homeschooling. The bullying and how the school system handles the situation.
And so how many children do you homeschool? Is just that you're one child?
In the beginning, it was just one, but now I'm homeschooling a 13-year-old. He's going to be 14, and a 5-year-old, and she's going to be 6. So I'm homeschooling 2.
Wow. And that's a major age gap too, right?
It's a big gap.
Yeah, but that's good. I'm only homeschooling one kid. My student is in the 8th grade. We've been homeschooling for 3 years now. So we started when he was he finished off his 5th grade. So we did 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at home. And some of the reasons why I actually started homeschooling is because when Rona happened, everyone was sent home, and sitting alongside my kid, I would, do my work while he did his virtual learning. And there were many topics that were discussed that I didn't quite feel comfortable with him learning. And I felt like the curriculum, once Rona happened, the curriculum kind of like just flew out the window. I don't know what happened to it. I mean, it makes me question whether there was a curriculum to start off with, because I just didn't get it. And so that really propelled me to look at homeschooling as an option. And I don't regret it. I think that we should have started a long time ago. But yeah, that's sort of like what led me to homeschool. Cool. So the next question is, did you have any initial barriers or reservations to the idea of homeschooling? Did you feel any resistance or reluctance to homeschool initially?
Initially, I was afraid. I was not equipped or prepared with the proper information, the proper laws, as in how to start it, the curriculum, and all of that. And that was my first, like, I guess, fear. How do I start it? Where do I get the information?
That's a real fear.
My fear. Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. I think I agree. You know, initially, I worked full time. I'm also a single parent, and I was finishing up my master's degree. And at the time, I didn't know how I was going to juggle the three. But I knew that something had to change and that I had to like pull him out and give him an opportunity to learn what I thought he should be learning at that grade level. And so I did a lot of research, looking up curriculum. Curriculum makes things so much easier, but I looked at, you know, curriculum and I just went for it. But that was a barrier. Like math was a big barrier for me. Although I have like a master's, I was really reluctant to teach math because math is really black and white. It's either wrong or right. And so I was reluctant to teaching him because everybody's learning style is different, right? So you always feel like, oh my goodness, what if I fail my kid? Like, I don't want to fail my kid. So I think that that was a real struggle initially, just making sure that I'm extra equipped. What do I do if he cannot figure out math? Like if I can't figure this thing out. But the cool thing about you schooling your kid is that you want the best for your kid. So
Yes, you make a way.
you make a way, and it worked out. We've done different curriculum, but we started off with Time for Learning. In case anybody is interested in a virtual program, Time for Learning has all of the main subjects: math, literature, language arts, science, and history. So it was a virtual program. They did all of my assignments, quizzes, grading, everything. It was a full curriculum that helped me during that first year while I finished my master's program. So I thought that was really helpful. And we're not using that program anymore. We done graduated and we're doing something else. But initially that was definitely helpful, that I didn't have to focus on grading the math, right? I didn't have to focus on explaining the math. The system did it for me. So I'm like, okay, that's a win, that's a check. And that was like my way to get over that hurdle. So yeah, and Jasenia pointed out she like the legal stuff, right? Like how do we get started? Because I think that's also a really big barrier. It's like, how do we get started? And to that, Jesse, I think that you had mentioned to me during our pre-talk about the Homeschool Legal Defense Association.
Yes.
Do you want to talk to folks about that?
I did my research and it answered a lot of questions, and I was able to subscribe on, they have like a monthly subscription. You could do a yearly. I was fortunate enough to do the yearly subscription, and they give you something as wonderful as this little card. I know you have one too.
Yes.
And this brought peace. Me having this and my husband having one brought peace of mind, as in, what if I get stopped in the streets for doing curriculum out in nature or taking my children on school trips? I don't want to be stopped by truancy or the police, as in, why aren't these children being educated? Oh, they're being educated. I'm their teacher, I'm their mother, and my husband is my support. So this brought so much peace, as in, okay, that part of the legality is covered. I'm protected. I know my rights. So they have a list of the rights that you and your child have for being homeschooled. And it brought that calmness that I needed. And I was able to tell myself, I can do this. I got this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit about Homeschool Legal Defense Association is an organization with lawyers equipped to fight for you in case you are ever brought charges against you for, like Jasenia was saying, truancy situations, right? If they're suspecting that your kid is not actually being educated. We do both live in New Jersey, and you know, we do have the right to homeschool. There are processes that need to take place in order for you to pull your kid out. I think that each county possibly, or each town, does it a little bit different. but we still have the right to homeschool. And so what the Homeschool Defense Association, I have to look down at my notes, Homeschool Legal Defense
it's a long,
Association.
long name.
It's a long name, but they definitely is there as a backup. Hopefully we never have to use their services. Hopefully it never comes down to New Jersey restricting parents from homeschooling. So for right now, just in case, we're covered, right? So the third question is first struggles. What did you first struggle with when you started homeschooling?
My first struggles were organization, having that structure of that routine. I like to say that you're gonna struggle, especially if you're beginning the first month and a half. And as your child understands what you expect from them, they understand those boundaries, like I am your educator, I am your teacher, I'm not just mommy. Like right now, this is what I expect from you, this is what I want. And yes, we discussed this before, I will fail you, I will give you those X's. With my child, when he saw the X's on some of his math, he cried like mom.
Yeah, they feel like kind of entitled at first, right? Like,
Or
oh, this
like
is
an
gonna be a piece of
insult.
cake. Like, no, it's
Yes,
not.
mom, she got me like, no, 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 we doing this. And it was math. Once they understand that, and they're gonna challenge you in the beginning because they don't know, and they have to understand those boundaries. If they're older, once they understand, it'll flow and they'll try to challenge you again. If it's the younger ones, you'll have some challenge. Mine is she's 5 going on 6. So I'm just starting the process with her. Now my teenagers, he knows what to do. He gets up, he does his thing, he has his timer, his phone is right next to him. He doesn't use it, but he has a timer, he flows, goes from one class to another. But it's that structure.
Yeah, I agree. Our first struggles was creating boundaries as well. A lot of times my kid would do the work, but he would give me lazy work. Like he would give me kindergarten sentences. Like, so I had to re-emphasize this is going to be challenging. Like you have to work at grade level or above. He struggled with wanting to read. He is not a kid that will pick up a book. That is not his first option. Just kind of cementing in his thoughts and minds that reading is important. In the foundation for everything is reading. If you can comprehend what you're reading, then you can figure anything out. You can build a house if you can read. Hello, once again. This is part 2, same video, different day. As you can see, me and Jasenia, we look different. That's because we had a hiccup and needed to jump off. But here we go again, just having a conversation about concerns that we've had about homeschooling and just basically how our journey started and kind of like where we are now. So we left off discussing struggles. So I'll let Jasenia jump in and talk about what are first struggles that she faced when deciding to homeschool.
Um, one of the few first struggles that I had was being organized, like setting the routine for the kids. The first struggles, I say that's the main thing, getting that order, getting that routine, getting that authority down, that I am the parent, but I am also your educator. I am also your teacher. And something else that came to mind, understanding how your child learns. A lot of times we are, how do I say, we're taught a certain way of how our parents taught us. Escribe todo, you write everything down, and some of our children are visual learners, some of our children, they're more like listeners, You can use music for them to learn. They're hands-on. So understanding how your child learns, you will have victory. That's the
Yeah.
main thing. You don't have to be an educator. You don't have to know it all. Know how to find information for your child. Teach them how to look up the information and how does my child learn. And I promise you, you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up because I am not strict with where he does his schoolwork. Like he can do it at his desk, he can do it laying down on his bed. And most of the times, that's how he chooses to do school. And I'm not a stickler for that, right? Other kids are, like you said, art audible learners. Some kids have ADHD as it's, referred to or whatever, or they just can't stay still, or they're more kinetic, like they need to be moving, right? And that's okay. The beauty of this is that we get to explore, like you were saying, we get to explore how our kids learn and like cultivate that learning environment, tailoring it to them, right? And then the learning process is so much more better when you understand your kid. Number four, our fourth question that we decided to talk about here is, how has your family adjusted to home education from like the beginning to now? How has that transition been? How have you guys blossomed?
I'm gonna say we have adjusted well. I'm not gonna use the word stickler. I feel for my family personally, we need routine, time management. As in, okay, we're gonna work on this. You set the timer. They can work on whatever they want. I give them the options. You choose what you want to study, what you want to learn. But there's a time set. If they want to wake up and kind of sleep in a little bit, I'm okay with that. But my son he has his time. He gets up. Now he wakes up his sister, which is great. And we go through our routine. So we have adjusted, I'm gonna say, really well. In the beginning, we did a lot of crying. um I'm gonna say the homeschooling first kind of for us kind of started as the practice was during the pandemic. So we did a lot of crying, a lot of paperwork, but we got organized, and I feel they have adapted well. Now they know, like, they can have their breaks, they can have their time that they need to rest, they can get up, move around, go back to work, they can praise, they can worship, they can read scriptures. If they need a 15-minute nap, you can have your nap, but I need that done, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like we have adapted well since they see the that beauty. It's not easy to homeschool, I'm gonna be honest, but since they see, wow, like I really have a lot of time for me,
Mm-hmm.
like I've done all this work throughout the day, and it's not like hours and hours, but they have done so much work, and then they enjoy their time more. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like those first growing pains. That applies to everything. Things will Homeschooling is what you make it. And in the beginning, it's going to be rough. You have to find your niche. You have to find what works for you. Like you were pointing out, that things that work for your family don't necessarily work for my family. You mentioned about the timer, setting up a timer, right? I think they called this block scheduling. So it sounds like you do a lot of block scheduling, where my kid, he's also in the eighth grade, and he just he flows right through everything. I ask him from time to time, hey, so what are you doing now? What subject are you doing now? Are you done with everything? Kind of give him the little reminders. But other than that, I'm really like hands off with him. Aside from grading, right? Grading his work and everything else. Other than that, I find that allowing him to take the lead on his own schedule, when he starts, when he's done,
It's like
all of that
college.
is that, yeah, exactly, like a college kid, right? All of that is on him. So he knows that if he starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, then he's not going to finish till probably like 4 in the afternoon. But that's totally on him. I mean, the schedule is on him. And I think that part right there, we've adjusted well with responsibility. this
Yeah.
part of like the growing pain, part of the adjustment is figuring out when things need to be done and doing it and being consistent. So even if I'm correcting work at 9 o'clock, at least for me, I'm not doubling up on my work the next day.
What you did last month in homeschooling might not work this month. So like you said, it's adjusting, adapting, changing, tweaking. Like, okay, we did this last month or we did this last year. It doesn't mean we're going to do it again this year, or it might work for your house. So you have to continually keep adapting, keep changing, keep tweaking. And that's the beauty of you're teaching your children this is how the world is.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to stay the same. You got to change, you got to evolve, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. Everything's always changing and evolving. Another piece of adjustment that I had to do in our coursework was that the first 2 years, I bombarded him with curriculum. He was doing coding. He was doing foreign language. He was doing so much. I had him doing so much that it kind of like overwhelmed the both of us. So I had to learn to scale back while still giving him enough work that not enough work, because I don't want him to have busy work. I want him to have solid work that he's gonna like learn from,
Be
right?
productive. Mhm.
Yeah, I want him to be productive. I want it to be something that he's going to take on for like many years. Our final item here, and it's lessons learned. What lessons have you learned from the whole homeschooling journey?
That I can do it. I thought I was not able to. I I was very fearful, not of my education, as in like not as if I'm not equipped to teach him, but as in like resources, or I don't know. I just that I was able to, and I'm able to.
Yeah, that's a lesson learned, definitely. Had I known what I know now, I definitely would have homeschooled my first son. Most parents, I think, are have reservations for doing it also because they work during the day. And so childcare is a major issue. And I understand that. Um, some so the school setting could be like the babysitter, right? Like they're learning and they're babysitting them, right?
For many, yes.
So I know that's like a barrier for some people because you don't have help. And I feel for those parents that actually want to do this but feel that they don't have a sitter, right? They have to work, they have to go out and work, and there's no one to stay at home with the child. So I definitely feel for those situations. But I also feel like where there's a will, there's a way. And me knowing what I know now, I definitely would have pulled my kid out a long time ago. I think this is so beneficial. It gives you so much more time. You were gonna say something? You want to say something?
But even with that, like some parents feel like, okay, like I can, like I might not have, but sometimes you have a grandparent. And with my son being homeschooled and I've had to do things, I've explained to grandma, this is what homeschooling is about. He knows what he has to do, set up the Wi-Fi, he does his work, and that can kind of help you think of different ways that your child is safe and yet they can still be homeschooled with a family member that you trust and that you love and adore. And like I said, God will always make a way. If it's God's timing, God will guide you to a way. Like now I have both of my children. I started with my son, now I have my daughter. With my son, like your son, he said he knows what he has to do. Like I really don't have to, like I don't bug him much. He knows. Now with her, it's a little bit more, she needs more of me. And that's okay too, until she gets used to it and does her thing.
Mm-hmm.
But God will, if it's something you really want to do, God will make a way. You just place it in his hands, pray, Lord, make a way, open a door, allow me to work from home. With
Mhm.
me, I had to go through a whole journey, and now I'm working from home. And thank God, my husband, he's our biggest supporter, but it might take some time, but you'll get there and he'll make a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that because grandparents, extended family members can be such a big help. And I understand also that some parents, some folks don't have that support at all.
Mhm.
But um, others do and may just not want to ask. And like you also mentioned, when a child is younger, you need more hands-on. When they're older, they don't
Yes.
need that guidance, that teacher guidance as much. But when a child is younger, you definitely need to be more instructional, and guiding them through the process of. So it's definitely challenging, but I think just with anything worth having is worth fighting for. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. So if this is what you want, and this is actually very equivalent to a private education. So it's cheaper. You're saving your coins by homeschooling your kid, and you're giving them a private education. Like this is a win-win because private school will cost you about 15,000 a year.
Ooh.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that this is the next best thing. And I think that many parents, if they actually think of it, they would prefer, most people that I've spoken with would prefer to put their kid in a private education setting. So if that's what you want for your kid, you can do this with homeschooling. And your education, if you're not a Christian, if you're not a believer, they have their secular curriculum out there, where you can still homeschool your kid, right? Let's say that your child is like battling with like bullying. You want to give them something that's equivalent to the school system. There's still secular curriculum out there. I use a Christian worldview curriculum. But just Jasenia, you use the public school system, right?
I use it more as a guide. What are the kids learning this week, this month? And then I create my own curriculum because there's certain things that we don't agree with the curriculum in the school system. And then I create my own, but I use it more as a guide. And that has worked for me as someone that's just starting. Now,
Yeah.
when I become a pro like you,
Uh,
it'll be a little
I
different.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to figure it
You'll
out.
put my eyes.
Listen, I done been through so many, not I'm exaggerating. I haven't been through so many, but I had to make adjustments to what we're using. But that's great because re- you're at least using it for a guide to make sure that your kid is on par, that you are
Mhm.
giving them what it is that they need for that specific grade level. So you're keeping them consistent with other kids, which is a huge help, especially when you don't know what they're supposed to do. I tested him into the level that he's currently on. He was going into the sixth grade when we first started. And so I just tested him to see if he would test above or below that grade level. And that's how I chose like the level where he was, because it's important for me that I don't create gaps in his education. And the program we're using now for language arts was said to be more advanced than the public school education. So I just wanted to test him to bring him up to speed if he needed to be brought up to speed, but just to make sure that we're not creating gaps in his education. Everything else I pretty much went on grade level. But another thing that I did was in terms of switching the program that I was using. And initially, when we first started this journey, I was still finishing my master's program. And I needed something that would take all of the stress away from me. Like I didn't have time to do any grading, any teaching, nothing. So I went with time for learning. I don't know if I mentioned this already during our first day. I used time for learning because it took the teacher stress away. Like it was God sent. However,
Mm-hmm.
it worked for that year. I found a little hiccups along the way, and not really with the program, but really with my son. Um, I know this can probably be a whole other video, but one, I'm gonna say it just because it may help someone while you're fishing for curriculum. What my son was doing is he was using his memory to memorize answers that he got wrong, and he would like play a guessing game until he got it right. And how I
Mm-hmm.
came up with that conclusion was he had a threshold, right? So let's say for his math, he would pass it if he would reach the 95% on that assignment, quiz, whatever it was. So it wouldn't pass him until he reached that threshold, right? And so what he would do is when I ran the report, I saw that he would repeat the test over and over and over again. So I'm like,
And
hold
it
up,
tells you the time.
something ain't right.
Mm,
Like, why is he
slick.
slick? So, oh, we have 10
Mine too.
minutes. But yeah, I noticed that he was repeating the assignment over and over again until he met that threshold. So this tells me one of two things. Either he's not learning it or he's skipping the
Mm-hmm.
whole teaching part of it. Like he's not putting his all into it, right? All of his effort into learning the subject. So I said, we got to switch you. We got to put you back on paper. So I'm going to say that yes, virtual programs, electronic programs, they're good. They work. You have to pay attention, run those reports, see what your child is doing, what he's not doing. You got to like catch on to those little things. And that's why I switched him from time for learning to like paper curriculum, which is what we're doing now. As we wrap up this session, I want to ask you if you wanted to add to any of the questions and the items that we went through, either the first day or today, day 2, before we wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts?
I do want to add, it's not going to be easy, mom or dad, if you want to homeschool your child, but it's so rewarding once you've gotten that order, once you gotten that respect, as in they're going to respect you, they're your children, as in the respect of an educator. Once you get that order, once you see them thriving, it's so rewarding. Also, if they need those extra snuggles, they need that extra love or that downtime, you set the rules. Another thing, not too many people are gonna understand what you're doing. They're gonna question you, oh, but this and that. Close those doors. It might be family, it might be a spouse, relatives, grandparents. Close your ears. If you feel this is where the Lord is leading you, or this is where you are being led, go for it all the way. Smaller
Yes.
children need more time, the older ones will adapt, but it's wonderful. It's a blessing, and I'm all for it.
Yeah. You said something super, super relatable. A lot of people are not going to agree with the way you do things, and it is okay. I don't have anything else to add to that point. You mentioned is rewarding, and this is super rewarding. Like you get to have those aha moments with your kids, like when they finally get something, right? And
Mhm.
all of this time, I was sharing that with the teacher. Now I don't get to share with the teacher no more. As a matter of fact, the teacher was feeling rewarded, right? For everything that your child was learning. And kudos to her, as she should, right? It's a good feeling. But now I get to experience that. Like when I read my son's essays
Yes.
and articles that he write. The other day he was writing some articles about landmarks in Australia, and the way he described them was just like, oh, this is good, this is really good work. And so I don't get to share that glory. I get to keep it. I get to meadow
Mhm.
in it, gush in it, whatever you want to say. I guess thank you, Jasenia. Thank you so much for
Thank
allowing yourself to come on to this platform and kind of like gush with me in this journey. And it's definitely a sacrifice.
Yeah.
But I think the word instruct us to instruct our kids in the way that they should go. And I think that this is a prime example of how to do that. We can educate our kids. We can educate our kids. We don't have to have the whole classroom management training to do that, right? We, especially regardless if you have a higher education or not, you can educate your kid. But if you can read simple instructions, I'm telling you, these curriculums are awesome. They tell you exactly what to do. They even provide the language on how to explain certain things to your kid. So if you can read instructions, you can do this. You can do this.
Is that okay?
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much. I guess we'll wrap up here. Thank you all.
Yes.
If you enjoyed this talk, please give this video a thumbs up, like it, subscribe. I am going to try to get more videos out. If you have any questions, if you want to share your thoughts, your comments about your homeschooling journey, please leave it down below. And till next time, God bless.